Hello, I'm Sam.
I'm Carsey.
And I'm Derek.
And this is Unpacking Homelessness, the podcast where we take a deep dive into the issues surrounding homelessness in our communities. Let's get into it.
All right, we are back with another episode of Unpacking Homelessness, and today we're joined by Margie DuBois. Margie is a confidence coach, leadership consultant, and founder of the Thirlby Company LLC, a coaching and consulting practice out of Denver that provides coaching, training, and facilitation services to nonprofits, businesses, and individuals. Prior to starting her company, Margie was the executive director of two national nonprofits, Rebuilding Together and Reading Partners. Margie's time in the nonprofit sector was what inspired her passion for developing people, revitalizing communities, and building thriving organizations. Outside of work, Margie loves reading, hiking, volunteering, and spending time with her husband, son, and friends. So welcome to Unpacking Homelessness, Margie.
Oh, thanks, guys. I'm so happy to be here.
Great to have you.
It is great to have you. So much of the discussion that we have here at Unpacking Homelessness centers around the immediate resources and support that we can offer to people currently experiencing homelessness. But we know that another very important aspect of it is prevention. And it's our understanding that you've done a lot of work in that field. And can you tell us a little bit about what it takes to prevent homelessness, maybe, and what you've done in those arenas?
Absolutely. Sure. So I'll start by saying that, research shows that an insufficient lack of income is the primary driver of homelessness. But I feel that that data point is a little too obvious and there's nuances to it. There's so much more below that. And so I have committed most of my work in the philanthropic space and the first part of my career to homeless prevention, in essence, by leading community-driven organizations that are working with individuals living in poverty. And the first organization I worked for is called Rebuilding Together. It's a national low-income housing organization that revitalizes the homes of low-income homeowners through the support of community volunteers. And it is truly the most beautiful mission I have ever been a part of in my life. Like, I've never found something more special and inspiring. And different than Habitat for Humanity, which might build homes from the ground up, Rebuilding Together takes a different look at it, and it provides critical home repairs that keep people safe and healthy in their homes. But what's happening when we serve those homeowners, we look at HUD income guidelines, right, which tell us about their income. And most of our homeowners ultimately are living at or below the poverty level. So after they don't have regular income by way of work. Most of them are retired, so to speak. And after Social Security benefits or whatever it might be for them, they have a very fixed income, and they're called what's called house poor. So after you pay for your mortgage payment, or even not, if their house is paid off, you pay for medical expenses and you pay for groceries, you do not have money to repair your home. So that looks like grab bars to get into the bathtub safely, a wheelchair ramp to get out of a house. Like we one time helped a veteran named Wes who had been in his house for 10 years without going down a wheelchair ramp, right? And he served in the military. We also do flooring, we do siding, yard work, all the things that can be done in a day, and it's incredible. And so we really are trying to prevent that one fall could happen that leaves someone in a hospital, or a really serious home issue would happen that they can't afford, and then they don't have a place to live.
10 years? Somebody was in their house for 10 years,
Yeah,
Margie?
Wes, he was a military veteran. He served and got polio and was disabled and had been in his house and hadn't had a wheelchair ramp for like 10 years when we got there. Things that we take for granted all the time.
Well, and anybody can help with that volunteer. That's actually how I met Margie in the first place. We have a
Yes.
mutual friend, John Hanks, who got to give him a shout out because
John Hanks is the best.
he is. And I don't know if I told you this, Margie, he was our very first Instagram subscriber
Oh
for the
my gosh, that
podcast,
is the
which,
best.
yeah, so that's how we were introduced because I apologize, I forget the full scope of the work, but it was something along the lines of fixing up a house. And I certainly am not Mr. Handyman. So I was
Mhm.
probably doing the landscaping, the stuff out back that didn't require any skills. But kudos to you for your work. And
Absolutely.
you're the executive director
Mhm.
of that, right?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, that's a big role. So, and anybody can volunteer with Rebuilding Together, it sounds
Yep.
like.
Yep, I believe there are some nuances region to region, but usually 14 and older is the requirement. The former requires a parent signature, but yeah, anybody with helping hands who wants to help a homeowner in need can get plugged in. It's a really amazing organization. Again, it's national, it's in almost every major city, so you can't go wrong.
Yeah, I imagine even, you know, in those scenarios where people are house poor and they have unsafe homes or homes that are not designed or ergonomical for their needs. Like what dangers, it makes me wonder, like, even though technically they're not homeless, is
Yep.
there a high risk of people in those situations becoming homeless?
Yeah, of
Um,
course. Absolutely. And of course, it varies from person to person, depending on their support system. Do they have local family or relatives or friends that can help them? But if they don't and they are lonely, which most senior citizens struggle severely with loneliness, if they have that bad fall or they have a terminal illness or they have some other health issue that arises in the house, we also dealt with hoarders. All sorts of issues that you would encounter in the home, mental health issues, etc. It's much closer than you think. But it's a beautiful, sometimes I don't like the word intervention, but it really is a beautiful intervention and prevention effort for those people.
What were some of the other types of projects you did? You mentioned ramps and grab bars for getting in and out of the bathroom. I guess just basic lawn maintenance things that we kind of take for granted that you just go out
Yes.
and take care of something.
Totally.
What other?
Painting, appliances. Some people didn't have washers or dryers, working washers or dryers, kitchen sinks, a tub that wouldn't drain, so they couldn't. We had one family, it was a single mom named Kim. She had three boys, when she even adopted and took under her wing, and they had not had a tub for years before we got there. And they would take water in a tub, in a bucket, excuse me, and carry and back and forth, prior to us going there.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I imagine that puts those children in a kind of peculiar place of like they themselves kind of being stuck in a cycle
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
low income or,
Yep.
like what their future probably looks like growing up like
Totally.
that and then having to adapt to society after living that way for so long. Do you have any stories that you can share from rebuilding together where you saw just a huge transformation of somebody who was maybe barely hanging on,
Yes.
and the program like really helped turn things around for them?
Absolutely. And I will 100% cry when I tell this story because it's my favorite, most like vivid memory that I had while I was there. So it was in 2014. We received an application in the spring from a woman in South Seattle named Ruth. And when we arrived at her house to do her walkthrough, it's what we do when we first meet an applicant to look at the home and see if it might be a good fit for us. There was a foot of standing water in her basement. And she had kitchen cabinets without doors, and repairs that were needed in every room. And we thought it was really, really interesting. And we sat down with her and we're like, Ruth, what's going on? And she explained that a year prior to then, her husband had passed away from pancreatic cancer, and she was used to him maintaining the home and taking care of things. And so after he passed, she decided to hire a contractor to remodel their kitchen. And unfortunately, this person was not trustworthy and they stopped work and ran away with all of her money, leaving her at the home in disarray, also with the standing foot of water in her basement. And she shared with us she had like nowhere to turn. She was grieving from the loss of her husband. She was scared and out of any money available to do the home repairs. So we were able to we knew immediately she was the perfect fit for us. And we were able to secure a sponsor and volunteer crew to come to her house for our biggest spring event of the year called National Rebuilding Day. And it was a wonderful company based out of the East Side named Greenpoint Technologies. And they were always one of our most generous sponsors because not only would they be a top sponsor of our event and do the house, the CEO himself would go out and personally buy all new furniture for the homeowners that day. And he's like, I want you to pick out anything you want. And he would just treat them to new furniture at the house. So it was truly the most special thing. Her husband was also in the military. So we had the Washington Department of Veterans Affairs come out and visit her and present her with an award. But she was so, that day, it was like a different person I saw. She was just so full of energy and hope, and she was chatting it up with everybody. And she started standing up straighter with pride. You felt like she felt proud of her home again and relieved. And it was such a transformative day that I asked Ruth if she would ever consider speaking at our fundraiser. We decided to launch a breakfast fundraiser that spring. And she said, yep, I'll do it, but I'm a little nervous. And I went to her house and learned her story, and we practiced and practiced and practiced. And that day, she stood, I have it written down, May 14th of 2014. She shared her story with over 200 supporters at a hotel downtown Seattle. I mean, imagine being that vulnerable in a room of strangers, essentially, minus the few of us she knew. And at the end of her speech, she shared the following words. And I can never say these without crying because they're etched in my memory forever. Rebuilding together caught me when I was drowning. Somebody reached into the water and pulled me out. And because of you, I'm breathing again. And it was just like, there was not a dry eye in the entire room as she said that. And it was just this beautiful, like, imagery of someone literally rescuing her, drowning in the water and pulling her out. And that is how she felt when we came to her house that day. It really is. And she also happened to have the standing water in her basement. So it was like this full circle moment. But that moment just really ignited just my passion for connecting volunteers together with people in their community who they might not know, and really learning their stories and what causes someone to arrive at a point where they are in that desperate need of help and risking losing their home and potentially becoming homeless.
Wow. So first of all, it gets my blood boiling that that builder put her in that position. I can only imagine on the heels of the death of her husband. That's just more than any person should have to go through. Oh, well,
It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did she go about finding you guys?
Yeah, so Rebuilding Together has really wonderful referral agencies. She may have been, I can't quite remember for her, it may have been King County Veterans or Washington Department of Veterans Affairs that take care of also spouses of military service members. And it could have been that. We also have Senior Services is wonderful at referring and other community organizations. So it's just one of our referral partners. Yeah. And sometimes we'll do canvassing in neighborhoods, but it's much more effective when we have a partner agency doing the referral because it instills trust and safety for that person when they're in such a vulnerable place. Then they can apply, knowing it's a credible organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, I mean, do you guys come across people that find it hard to trust, to sort of let their
All the
guard
time.
down? Yeah.
All the time. You either almost have two personalities, not to generalize, like, I can't wait to talk to strangers and invite them into my home. I'll take anything the moment they meet you, or like scared to death, don't want you in their home. It like tends to be those two personalities, especially with the military veteran. You know, veterans are the most humble, hardworking, amazing humans, and they are generally speaking very uncomfortable accepting help, let alone free help. So that's where we need more nurturing relationships and community partnerships typically. And also if a neighbor hears from their neighbor friend about us, that also helps.
So what are some other things on the homeless prevention front that that in your experience, things that aren't always first to mind when you think of what could be done to prevent homelessness?
That's a great question. I mean, the honest answer is it all starts in early childhood. And I had the privilege of leading another national nonprofit called Reading Partners in Colorado. And that was a national children's literacy organization. And many people don't know that early literacy is one of the most important variables to the long-term trajectory of not only a child, but in their adult life as well. So The organization was focused on K-4 reading proficiency. And the reason why that is the case is that when a child reaches fourth grade or begins fourth grade, that's a major milestone in their kind of academic career, so to speak. And so if they're reading at grade level by the time they start fourth grade, they're 4 times more likely to graduate from high school on time. I mean, it's a huge, huge indicator. And so we were really focused on that area. And my favorite quote is one by Frederick Douglass, which is, once you learn how to read, you'll forever be free. And I feel like that can't sum up enough the essence of Reading Partners and its missions and why it's so important.
Yeah. So Reading Partners is like a one-on-one situation.
Yeah, great
Okay,
question.
okay.
I should have said that earlier. Yes, it's all one-on-one literacy instruction, following evidence-based curriculum. It's the best of the best I have seen. And it works when kids get enrolled in the program and their tutors show up, and they get 2 sessions every week for the whole school year. So it's powerful. Like their before and after numbers are remarkable. Yeah. But there are further indicators. Once children are in high school, we look at high school graduation, whether or not they graduate from high school indicates a lot with job and income. There you go, the connection to homelessness. There's connection points with pregnancy risk for teenagers as well, and drug use, all sorts of other variables that can happen if you are not literate or you don't graduate from high school on time, which doesn't mean I've seen amazing success stories of incredible leaders and entrepreneurs and humans that did not graduate from high school and are thriving. But just looking statistically at the numbers, it's a huge opportunity to prevent homelessness from happening. And a lot of the families that we served at Reading Partners, our average school was probably 94% free or reduced lunch. And that's a very high percentage of the kids that have qualified for free or reduced lunch. And so there was also schools we had that were homeless kids, unfortunately, were at that school with their parents or their moms. And something that may have come up on your podcast before is women and children are primarily victims of domestic violence. So that's another layer to that. So again, having them at a safe school environment, becoming proficient in reading. And another really, really important thing is having mentors in their lives. Like mentorship is huge, huge indicator, especially if that person looks like the person they are tutoring or the student they are working with, they are way more likely to graduate on time.
Who are the tutors?
The tutors are community volunteers. So just like at Rebuilding Together, just wonderful community volunteers from corporations, retirees, high school students, community college students, all over the place. There's college students who do their work study hours through Reading Partners. There's tons of volunteers, and they're amazing.
I think I shared with you, Margie, when I was in first grade, I had the equivalent of a reading partner. The fourth graders would come in, and
yes!
we would we would read to the fourth graders, and it had a very profound effect on me. I remember how excited my fourth grade partner was of you're reading with such great expression, and just that level of encouragement was had a good effect.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, we always remember those people.
Yeah, first grade. I remember his name, and I haven't talked to him since first grade.
Yeah, those relationships, and that's the most special part of it. I mean, those kids will be in my heart forever. I remember everyone that I tutored, they were just incredible. And one of them, my second student, she's now in high school, which just blows my mind. And I tutored her when she was in second grade, so it's kind of crazy.
Wow.
Oh, I bet you made such a big impact on her life. I bet she remembers everything you said to her too.
Thank you. Yeah, she's awesome. I had the privilege, because of my role, I was able to get to know her family better than most people might would. And her mom was just incredible and so gracious.
Yeah, I'm sure the parents of these kids are just so full of gratitude for the opportunity to have a community surrounding and help uplift their own children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just to kind of bring this back to the bigger picture, many of the parents of the children at Reading Partners are working more than one job. If you have a single parent, they're definitely working more than one job. If you have multiple kids under the same household, that means you cannot read to them every evening one-on-one after school. So It's a huge, huge need. And that is why the summer months can be very precarious. Kids tend to have what's called a summer slide, and that is because they don't have that structured reading environment every day unless a parent has the means and privilege to provide that for their child. So it's full circle, huge, tremendous challenge. The literacy crisis got even more severe during the pandemic, but it's also a tremendous opportunity to solve problems and make our future brighter and better.
There's like a theme between both of these organizations, and it's like giving people the opportunity to express empathy and
Mhm.
having people receive just generous acts of kindness of
Yes.
others. I mean, these are all like volunteer positions, right? Like these are just
Mm.
people, and they probably don't quite know what they're entering into. Like maybe
Mhm.
they know they're going to go clean up someone's house, or maybe they know they're going to read to a kid,
Yeah.
but I'm sure that experience is so much more impactful than they anticipated, you know?
Mhm.
And I think whether you're low income or not, like we all kind of experience this feeling of insecurity, or this feeling of like we question our worth at times. There's like two sides to it, where somebody is receiving a very tangible benefit to these
Mhm.
programs, but I just can't imagine the experience of the volunteers who are getting to feel like so much self-worth and purpose in these things.
Life changing. It really is
Yeah,
life changing. And there's an adage in the a kind of volunteer nonprofit community that the volunteers get more out of it than the people they're serving. And there's a lot of truth
I
to that.
bet.
Like I still remember my last kid I tutored before my last year that I was at Reading Partners. The very last day of school, I had the biggest pit in my stomach. Like I was so nervous, I wanted to throw up because I loved this student so much. And he was Andreas, his name was. And I was saying goodbye to him. He's going back into his classroom after our little award show. And I was like, Andreas, are you going to say bye to me? And he looks at me and he starts bawling. And then I start bawling. And we were just like hugging and crying in the hallway. And it was kind of funny. My staff saw me. They're like, oh, Margie, there she goes again, crying again. I know I'm like the tearjerker on the team. But it was so special. Like we literally read together every Tuesday. I think I actually ended up doing 2 sessions a week with him because we were such a good fit. And you become an important part of each other's lives. It's not just about like getting reading proficiency markers. It's more than that.
Yeah, you're broadening a child's entire perspective of what's out there. That makes me think about when I was in I think I must have been in maybe third grade, and I remember going to this other school, and I would read to the kindergartners, and I loved it. It was so fun to sit, and I think the other thing too is like they look at you like you're this big kid, you know what I mean? And they're like, "Oh, you're
Yeah.
so cool, and you can read so well." And in third grade, you're like, "Yeah, I am so cool,
I
and I
sure
can
am.
read so well," you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and it just really points to the fact that like these little donations of time can really add up to these big results for these people that maybe,
Totally.
wouldn't have the opportunity otherwise. And you just taking a couple of hours a week can
Mhm.
make such a big difference. That's such a beautiful
Huge
message for
difference.
people.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love the idea of giving other children the opportunity to help. You know, we're discussing preventing homelessness at a young age, or starting at a young age to prevent it, but the idea of inducing that experience of empathy in children is also very important.
Yeah.
There's clearly a theme in the work that you do with finding the people that are maybe just like a couple steps away from being
Mhm.
in a much worse situation.
Yes,
And
that's a great way of saying it.
and I know that now you're doing coaching and consulting. Can you
Yeah.
tell us about that? I'm so curious about that.
Yeah. So I'll tell you in brief, but I got towards the end of my time at Reading Partners and I realized I was in a rut. I loved Reading Partners and its mission, but I was feeling like I needed a professional change. Being an executive director of a nonprofit is a really, really tough job. And I won't get into what it is, but it's not easy. And I'd done that for 12 years and I just felt like I was needing something different. And so after doing an epic listening tour, tons of informational interviews and networking, I decided that I wanted to open my own coaching and consulting practice. And before I left Reading Partners, I pursued my coaching certification, and I also got into an amazing program at the Denver Metro Chamber called Leadership Denver. Got into that, and that was super eye-opening and energizing for me, and felt like it gave me the courage I needed to make the leap. And so my business today is a combination of coaching, both one-on-one and groups, as well as consulting, working with the teams. And that can take place in training, facilitation, retreat days, those kind of things. But the connection point I had was during my time in the nonprofit sector, I really developed a passion for one, revitalizing communities, bringing people together in the community to ignite change, but also I loved leading teams, and I loved helping develop people by giving them really great skills. And so one of the skills that just continues to be more and more present is just curiosity and empathy and active listening. And no matter what industry you're in, that is paramount to your success. And it's a huge connection to homelessness, because I believe that it's the biggest thing lacking in our country that we need to do in order to solve the crisis. And empathy is something that gets confused often. Something that I teach in corporate trainings is people think when you validate someone and show empathy to them, it means that you agree with them. It actually does not have anything to do with agreement or consensus. It means that they have the right to feel the way they do. It means that you have the capacity to look outside of yourself and think, man, how would I feel if every night on the way home to my house, I was scared I didn't have food to feed my kids? How would that feel? How would that feel if every day when I was at home, I was worried my ex-husband would show up and beat me in front of my kids? Like, what would happen if you had a parent who didn't support your sexual orientation, and you decided you didn't feel safe at home, and it was actually safer for you to be on the streets? So when you start learning the stories of unhoused individuals, you will be amazed at what you learn. I've yet to hear a story that wasn't compelling. And I think that homelessness is misunderstood as this optional, you know what, I didn't work very hard at life, and I'm lazy, and I'm just going to make careless decisions, so I'm just going to be homeless. That really is the narrative that the vast majority of Americans think about unhoused individuals, and it's just so far from reality.
Not to dive into our opinions on politics, but
Yes, correct.
I am curious with the new administration, just as a comparison to maybe the last or former administrations, what effects are you seeing? Because it's clear that people having empathy for their community members and for their neighbors makes such a big difference. I mean, going back again to the things that you've done before, the rebuilding and Reading Partners, these are volunteers, these are regular people coming in, entering these other individuals' lives, and through empathy and through giving them time and energy, really changing their lives and making a difference. There's no doubt that there's a greater power that if we could inject some empathy into there, that would be maybe even more impactful or more universally impactful. Like, we know that there are a lot of budgets being cut right now. I work in a building, like a shared office space, and there is a housing authority office in there, and they for the first time in 20 years did not get their grant renewed. And if I said the name, we would all recognize the name of this housing authority. And it seems that they are right now grappling with whether they're going to be able to continue without that grant. Are you seeing any of those firsthand? I mean, you're very much like immersed in this world.
100% of my nonprofit clients are dealing with this right now.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're all in wildly different industries. And so it's very, very scary to think what happens then, because when you remove those nonprofit organizations that are doing some of the hardest work of anybody, who are solving the problems for less of a cost to taxpayers by leveraging public and private dollars and getting innovative in the way they fundraise and use resources. They also have in-kind donations that they get to do their work. When you remove those resources, what's going to happen is it's going to create more problems for our country and our communities. There will be more tax dollars needed to do that. Then they will also need to rehire a lot of the government workers that they have fired to do the work.
Already happened.
And it's already happened. And at that point, if you were somebody who, I know somebody who's a pregnant mom who got laid off in, the forest industry, and now she's probably going to pivot to a new job. She just might not be available to go back to that job, or feel so burnt and hurt that she doesn't have that trust to go back. So we have to think about the long-term gain and ROI. And Reading Partners has statistics surrounding there's actual correlations with literacy and prison, and how much money we save in prison systems as a result of people being literate. I mean, it's crazy. Wow. And so I'm less concerned about political parties. I'm more concerned about people being curious learners, educating themselves, being aware of their media literacy skills, which are very low in America for most people, and being critical thinkers and thinking, how can we solve this problem in a way where everybody wins at the end of the day?
Yeah, I agree.
So it's just, you have to think strategically and look at the big picture and the long-term gain. And we look at things in a surface level way, and it doesn't work when you do that.
How can we inject empathy into our government, especially an administration as aggressive as the one we have right now with budget cuts? And it just seems like they are so out of touch with what people need, and what makes our communities go round. And just to think that it's just a numbers game.
Totally.
And it's not. It's so much more than just a numbers game. Like the grants that are being written aren't just, they're not going nowhere. Like you said, like these organizations are finding ways to spend that money very efficiently. And yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, do you have any ideas of like how we can reach it on a higher level?
Oh my gosh, I've thought about this for months and months in my brain, just stewing on it a little bit, to be honest. And I'll start with the kind of bad news, and then I'm going to go to the good news. Okay, so the bad news is we are not going to change our current administration. Our current administration has demonstrated time and time again, they do actually not have the capacity for empathy. That's not part of their DNA, the way they do business, the way they lead. It's most likely it will not shift. I don't see them ever demonstrating that in leadership. And so you have to think, okay, well then if that's the case, what can we do? How can we teach this, inspire this, and get curious with each other? So what that looks like on a basic level is having more kind, respectful, curious conversations with people in your community who might look different than you, vote different than you, love different than you, whoever it is. I have conservative relatives and friends, and we disagree all the time, and that's okay. But through our conversations, we've actually over time been able to align more on like, oh, we actually do think the same way about abortion now that we have the information. What can we do about this, right? So it's really staying curious, and empathy goes both ways. I want to make sure your listeners aren't thinking I'm just thinking one direction or the other. It really goes both ways. There are a lot of people who have felt in our country very lost, forgotten, and unheard, not understood for many, many years. And when people feel completely invalidated for a long period of time, that's not going to lead to good things, right? So we have to figure out how we can have more clear and kind conversations with each other. That's one. In our day-to-day life at work, you could literally be at a coffee shop and just have a conversation with a stranger about it. I saw stuff during the election. A friend who's a political leader in the community had coffee conversations with strangers and actually helped them get them to the voting booths just by being empathetic and kind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people want to connect with other people. I mean, unfortunately, I think the the play, right, is to divide us. It's to make
Right.
us feel like we're so different from the people
Totally.
around us. But at the end of the day, like you said with your relatives, if you can just put, I think, your pride and your ego aside and just dampen that a little bit and just
Okay.
listen,
Yep.
we're a
Just
lot,
stay curious, like learning about, I
yeah.
teach professionally, I teach communication coaching and active listening because it's a skill set most people don't have at work professionally. The vast majority of people have never been taught how to become an active listener, how to coach others, and it's really important for your success. But there's a beautiful quote that says, and I'll paraphrase it, something like the goal is listening is not to reply, it's to understand. So how many of us, someone's talking to us and we're already thinking about what our response back to them or what our opinion is, instead of just saying, huh, tell me more about that. Like, what made you develop that belief? Like, tell me more about your experiences growing up and what contributed to that, right? And really getting to know somebody's lived experience and what has led to that. And it's amazing what you can unlock. And then if somebody is feeling more heard by you, they're more likely to consider your viewpoints or to rethink their own opinions.
I love all
Yeah.
those quotes, Margie. There's the seek first to understand, then to be understood. And then
Yeah.
there's the one of you have two ears and one mouth. That's a
Mhm.
reason. Listen first
Oh, good
before.
one. Good
And
one.
That's the one we've been told since we were tots.
and then my favorite, Carsey, you've probably heard me say this a million times, of like um, when you're talking to somebody and their mouth is open, you can't listen with your mouth open because that's when you're like they're ready to
Mhm.
chime in with something. And so
That's so good.
great
Love
feedback,
Yeah.
that.
Margie.
So cool.
Yeah, that is great. Yeah, and one of the things I think about is in the midst of all of this political stuff that's just a bunch of noise, I feel like at the end of the
It
day,
is. Yep.
people are starting, they have been, I think, unfriending people that are very polarizing, that they don't agree with. And I think that like that's fine. There's a place for that. If someone's
Mhm.
viewpoints make you uncomfortable, you have to have your own
Totally.
boundaries. But at the
Yep.
same time, I think that there's value in being able to create space for conversation and not closing out people just because they do think differently than you think.
Mhm.
Not to say that they are right and you're wrong. I don't think it's black and white like that. But if we're ever going to
Oh,
be able to break down the boundaries and have these conversations, we've got to at least keep some otherwise you're just creating a sounding board of people that think exactly the way that you think, and
absolutely.
that's not healthy either.
Yep.
And it's boring.
Totally.
It
It
is
is.
boring.
It is boring. You're totally right. Yeah. And then I would say the third piece to this, well, maybe the second after we're going on this curious listening and getting to know and understand, is volunteering. Like
Mm.
start immersing yourself in your community with organizations that are serving people who are very different than you. Because, Rebuilding Together is a great example of an organization that has very diverse people from a political standpoint between their corporate sponsors, their donors, their board members, their staff, their all of the people, right? Even their homeowners that they serve. And they all come together for one mission at every project. And there might have been somebody who showed up to Ruth's house that day who thought one way about the people we were serving. And at the end of the day, their life was changed. And they think completely differently now about low-income homeowners and the circumstances that lead to their situation.
That's beautiful. I imagine too, like you're going into these situations and the more that you can like understand that you don't know everything and you don't have to know everything, it makes
Yeah.
it easier, right? That's that
Yes.
curiosity of like, I don't have to have all the answers. This is my
Yes.
hypothesis about this thing, but I'm really
Yes.
excited to be proven wrong, you know?
Totally. I love that. Yeah, I don't have to know everything. That's so great. And along the lines of the curiosity piece, I would encourage
Mm.
anyone to make a financial contribution to homeless shelters right now, and take the time to meet with somebody who works at the shelter and ask them to tell you some stories. Confidentiality can be extremely important in homeless shelters, depending on who they're serving, but they are willing to share, without names, stories of their clients, and you'll be blown away once you hear the stories because it's not what you think. And once you have that, you're able to practice that empathy.
Yeah, and thanks for that reminder to contribute to shelters right now and organizations right now too.
Yeah.
I think we're all feeling a little strapped, but but that couple extra dollars that we put wherever else, organizations really do need it now more than ever
They
with
need it
what's happening.
bad.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's normal feelings strapped financially. I'm a new mom. I sometimes feel very stressed financially, and I'm a small business owner too. But literally, if everybody gave $20, it could add up to so much money and
Yeah.
really change the world.
Might be able to keep some of these places around that are kind of hanging on by a
100%.
thread right now. Yeah.
This was great, Margie. Really
Yeah.
appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah,
This was
of
very
course.
insightful. We definitely want to kind of get together some of um, these topics and these organizations that you're talking about. And
Mhm.
so the first one was in Seattle, Rebuilding Together Seattle, but they do have a Denver chapter.
Yep.
We want to look into that more.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
the reading, I apologize, what's
Reading
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 partners.
partners.
Partners is also in Denver. Did they both have websites that that our listeners can look into and learn more about?
Yep. I would start with rebuildingtogether.org and then readingpartners.org. And from there, you can find your local affiliate or region to get plugged in.
Awesome.
Yep. Yep.
That is awesome.
I wanted to read a quote from with you guys that just a beautiful kind of closing surrounding our conversation around intellectual curiosity. And it's written by Adam Grant, who I'm sure you've heard of, a very well-regarded Wharton professor and organizational psychologist. And he says, I don't know is not an admission of ignorance. It's an expression of intellectual humility. I was wrong is not a confession of failure. It's a display of intellectual integrity. I don't understand is not a sign of stupidity. It's a catalyst for intellectual curiosity. And I love that. Like, what would happen if more of us on a weekly basis said, I don't know, I was wrong, and I don't understand? I think that could change the world. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you for reading that. That's a very beautiful
Yeah,
quote. I love that. Margie, thank you so much for meeting with us today. It was so great to talk to you, and we really appreciate your time.
sure. Thank you so much. It's an honor being a part of your journey on this podcast, and I can't wait to listen to other speakers too.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you. Thanks
you.
so much.
Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Margie.
All right.
Okay.
Have
Yeah.
a great day.
Bye.
See
See
you
ya.
later,
Bye.
Margie.
See ya.
Bye. All right, let's unpack that. All right, well, that was a really interesting conversation. What did you guys think about that? What were your main takeaways?
She is great. I loved that last quote, and I'm so happy that she pasted it into our chat. Maybe I'll just read it one more time because it was so good.
Do it.
She said, I don't know is not an admission of ignorance. It's an expression of intellectual humility. I was wrong is not a confession of failure. It's a display of intellectual integrity. I don't understand is not a sign of stupidity. It's a catalyst for intellectual curiosity. That's by Adam Grant.
I
That's the
love
part.
that.
Yeah, isn't that good?
Something about like I don't understand. That one in particular, like it does make you like when I say I don't understand, you're at least me, my like reaction is like that does make me feel stupid when I say I don't understand. But it is really so healthy to admit when you don't understand something. You know what I mean? And to say, can you say that in a different way? Or can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Like that's just the way that she helped us, I think, see that like curiosity is really the angle people need to be aiming for just with the world, like just being curious about what's going on, and not thinking that you have to have the answer or you're stupid, you know.
Well, it seems like conversations are often started with the intention of changing someone's mind.
Yeah.
And especially with divisive conversations, then going in with asking questions seems like a much better way to learn, and especially if you're sincere about it. You're looking to understand. You're not looking to change minds, and especially if it's someone that you know has different views than you, then I think that's a very healthy way to look at it.
Yeah, I would say our little project here is kind of
Yeah.
us saying, "Hey, we don't understand what's happening. what's happening out there? What is going on? And we are just trying to figure that out and talking to people. I feel like we can take that away too with each episode, because we did start this project on kind of the foundation of we want to understand what's happening with homelessness better. We want to understand the issue, the problems. It was really interesting talking to Margie and hearing her take on preventing homelessness. When she was talking about rebuilding together and rebuilding those homes, I have definitely heard of the term house poor. That's not really something I've thought so much about when I think about homelessness. I haven't really thought a lot about people who have homes, but are almost living in conditions that I would, like when you think of people that are experiencing homelessness, it's so heart-wrenching because you think like it's cold outside and maybe they don't have food today, or maybe their feet hurt from walking, or maybe they just don't know what they're doing with their day. Maybe they're just trying to survive and they're just in survival mode. But there are people with houses that are experiencing all of those things as well, that, like she said, like the man who didn't leave his house for 10 years, and maybe you can afford a house, but can you afford heating that house? And if you have standing water in your basement, you're talking about mold and all sorts of things that come along with that, and damage to the foundation of the home. And it's just another aspect of this issue that's opening our eyes to all the ways in which we can help,
Yeah.
and which people need help to
Well, and
prevent the
obviously
suffering.
our topic here is homelessness, but I think it can be broken down on just a very basic level for human interaction of just talking with people is a stretch now with technology being at the stage that it's at, easier than ever. And they say that the first thing you cut when you're going broke is food. Food's the very first thing. People would rather give up
I do too.
their
Yeah.
their
I think
diet.
that's
Yeah,
universal. Yeah.
yeah.
Really?
But
That's interesting.
yes, it's the number one. And then
I do. I
so
cut
you
my
think
food
about it,
budget.
and when you have
Mhm.
nothing to do, when say you still have a job, you come home from work, um, then you want to have TV. And so you have screen time, you have TV, and that just kind of dulls motivation. And so I don't know, one thing that I'm very passionate about with our project here is showing how accessible these volunteer opportunities are. And I didn't really kind of finish my thought with John being our introduction. That was the extent of my knowing Margie. And the only reason that happened is because John invited me to do this volunteering opportunity. There's a bunch of these out here, and by just inviting each other and spreading awareness, and that's what I would love um, us to kind of be a hub. Want to go to Unpacking Homelessness to learn about what sort of volunteering opportunities we can do, and I think that that's a very entry level way to kind of get started.
Yeah. I want to throw in one more thing too that really inspired me in that conversation. And that was getting children to volunteer. like
Yeah,
like like have your children read to younger children, or like invoke that empathy and that good feeling of giving back, like, and how truly good it feels. I'm sure um with like Margie, I mean, she's just such a force of nature. She really thinks outside of the box, I feel, with how she can help people. And I think that like once you start, it's really hard to stop. Like once you
got a
start
taste for it.
volunteering, it's probably really hard to go on without just having that desire to like get that good feeling again. And I think like, yeah, if we can give that to our children at a young age, and cultivate this at a younger age, then like,
The example that I was thinking of is in Japan. Do you remember me talking about that? Japan, how the students they have there's no
Yeah.
janitors.
Hmm.
They cook their own lunches. They clean up after each other, and it's just started at a young age.
yeah.
Yeah, well, and so like, my son is 9, and I've been reading more and more about like the developmental stages that he's going through. And a lot of the things I'm reading talk about how at that age they're in between two worlds basically. It's that Britney Spears song, "Not a Girl, Not Yet a Woman," sort of comes into mind. Like, he's like a child, but he's becoming a teenager essentially. And how if you can help kids feel useful, it's so good for their self-esteem. It's so good for their pride if they feel like they're doing something that's serving others. And so I think getting, even something like reading, that's such a small way to help kids feel like that they're useful, they're knowledgeable, at that young age.
Yeah.
Real quick,
Yeah.
would you mind just singing part of that song so I know which Britney Spears one you're talking about?
Even if I wasn't sick, I would say no.
As you go into a cough attack just to avoid it.
Yeah, really, I don't. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was a really great conversation with Margie. I'm really glad she was able to take the time to talk to us. Yeah, thank you guys for your time as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Another episode down. Learned a little bit more.
Another thing unpacked.
I would
I'd
make
like
a
to
joke.
say we're
Yeah.
What?
I was gonna say the same thing.
Wait, what?
Excuse me. I was gonna make a joke. I was like, we're gonna have nothing left to unpack. But I'm like, no, this is such a complicated
Oh, I know.
topic.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're
I
gonna
was
be
going to make a
unpacking
joke
forever.
like, hey, yeah, we're really getting to the bottom of this. But that's also a joke
They don't
because
I
there's so much more.
Like with
There's so
everything,
much
the
more.
more you learn, the more you know, you understand what you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The more you learn, the more you understand what you don't know. Derek
Yeah,
Levin. I want
Oh
that
no,
to be.
that was Gandhi. That was Gandhi.
That's Gandhi.
I would have been way more eloquent than that, clearly.
Oh, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, that was an awesome episode. Thank you guys for the time, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.
Hey, right back at you. We
Enjoy
unpacked
the
it.
sun.
Thanks
Bring
for
on
listening.
spring.
Yeah.
Yay.
Thanks for listening to Unpacking Homelessness. This episode was produced and edited by us. Our theme song is by Eric Lawson. You can find more of his music at soundcloud.com/eelaws. If you or someone you know would like to contribute to our show, get in touch with us at unpackinghomelessness@gmail.com. Until next time.